Hey, gang, welcome back to Rush Roundtable. This is episode 239. We're going to be talking about Secret Touch. The way out is the way in. And I would be neglectful if I didn't mention the fact that we are recording this on July 29th, which happens to not only be Getty's birthday, so happy birthday to Getty. We'd sing, but we don't want to get copyright stricken. But it is also the birthday of our very own Paul Cormier, so happy birthday, brother.
It was meant to be. Anyway, yeah. Thank you.
And also in history today, David?
There is another thing that happened on this day, probably the best birthday present Getty ever got. The new guy officially joined the band on this day, the late, great Neil Peart. So the Rush that we listened to for so many decades began on this day.
Hard to believe that was 50 years ago.
Lot to celebrate. All right, so without further ado, I want to introduce the entire panel. We've got Paul as the birthday boy, as we said. I am Paul Simon, your host, no relation. Rob Bukta, David Utzler, and Eric Winter. So, want to remind you, please do like and subscribe, share this episode on your favorite social pages, and if you like, you can also tip us on Ko-fi, and make sure you check out our sponsors. Links are below. So without further ado, since we are still talking vapor trails, and this is Secret Touch, we're going to talk about the tarot card that is matched with this song, which is the Hermit. And I will be sharing my screen for Paul to read now.
So the tarot, the tarot arcanum that represents Secret Touch is the Hermit. It symbolizes isolation, restriction, and withdrawal, cutting ties, temporary or not, with society in order to seek knowledge about what surrounds you and also to gain self-knowledge. The letter could mean a reference to something that was lost or an important revelation. The light that the hermit carries surrounds him and inclines him to patient research and studies, or makes him feel encouraged to take up something abandoned a long time ago. However, there is no guarantee of progress as its influence is neutral, only recommending patience and dedication and advising to observe the path before each new step. It reveals, therefore, a spirit of sacrifice, prudence, discretion, retreat, and surveillance.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pretty self-explanatory with the song as we get into it. So, our song opens with intro, nice, almost jazzy, smooth. Got Neil hitting the rim with the sticks. Got both Alex and Getty coming in. And then intro on the lyrics. It's almost an introspective, both lyrically and musically. And it's the way out is the way in. The way out is the way in. Or way in. Or way in, if you prefer. The way out is the way in. The way out is the way in. So that was inspired, if I can find it quickly, by American writer and psychologist Mark Ian, I'm going to butcher this, Barish, published in the late 2000 by Utne Reader magazine. Night Eyes ended up contributing ideas for the phrase, the way out is the way in, which Neil called an enigmatic mantra. So, your thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, I always put the lyrics to this record in context of Neil's journey, right? Regardless of the sources and the kind of intentions and meanings that were in the sources, Neil is recontextualizing these things, I think, in the context of his own experience, especially at the time, and kind of hinted at in some of the earlier tracks as well. But realizing that what he went through, you can't get around. You got to have to go through. So what's the way out of this? Well, it happens to be the same as the way in. You have to go through it. Now, whether Neil meant that or not, I can't say because obviously I don't know, but it appears like that to me, And when we get into some of the later lyrics of kind of the topsy-turvy, out of touch, the description, Paul Cormier, that you read of the Hermit, that encapsulated Neil. Every word seemed to express who he was. So as he goes through this topsy-turviness that we're going to explore. The way out, the way to healing, the only way out is the way in. You have to go through.
And a lot of us have read Ghost Rider. I don't believe it's projecting at all to say, yeah, that sounds exactly like how he sounded as he wrote. So between the lyrics on the album and the music, which we'll get to as well, and the words in the book Ghost Rider, travels on the healing road. I can talk today. I think you're spot on with that. I don't think that's a projection at all.
And musically speaking, I have a quote from Getty. This is out of Bass Player magazine from July of 2002. And he says, "We built the song around these repeating bass chords that I thought sounded like French horns." And he doesn't say specifically which part, but I think it's this softer intro part where he's way up on the neck, just strumming, whole notes of bass chords. I think it sounds a lot like, French horns. And the bass carries the song, I think, throughout the entire rest of the 6 or 7 minutes of the song. And it starts off strong with these French horn sounding bass chords.
And I did read that they decided when they didn't like the original sound they had, that they put a mic up so that it got his fingers picking on the strings.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then they doubled it. So I agree completely. That's good. And I think I read it was Getty's favorite song off the album. Did I read that right? You guys seen that?
I think I saw that too, yeah.
Yeah, I think over his 70 shows, he had a hard time doing the song. So, because it's vocally, he's really up there in register, which is not really like a regular thing that was going on. Apart from coming off of My Favorite Headache, of course, with the chordal play, the higher vocals. And then, of course, with Alex, he has the counterpoint underneath. So he can really just kind of float nicely underneath what Ged's doing. So it's a really nice continuation from all the songs so far. That practice is still in play. That approach to the arrangements is still happening here. And I just love the mood of it. I think even before we started, we were talking about Cream a little bit. So I think just that little homage to Cream as a whole for this whole song, but especially here where there's definitely more sort of interplay happening in the very beginning. Nice calm before what's coming. So
yeah, as it kicks right in here, exactly. So right into that first verse, vocals start immediately, and the tempo increases significantly from what Eric had been describing. Out of touch with the weather and the wind direction, with the sunrise and the phases of the moon, out of touch with life in the land of the loving, with the living night and the darkness at high noon. So again, going back to how David described the thought process behind that, it's like he's seeing the darkness at high noon, he's feeling out of touch with the land of the loving. He's feeling our protagonist, as I always say, is feeling out of touch and out of sync with life in general. He can't relate to things, doesn't feel he's a part of it. And this will come up, don't want to jump ahead, but in lyrics, it's going to fit one of his literary inspirations really, really well.
Yeah, there's this solar, lunar, phases of the moon, sunrise, everything works a certain way, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And we expect that and we rely on that, but he's not in touch with it. Other things have happened, and he just isn't with the rhythm and the syncopation of life and nature, which he loves so much.
Which I'd almost describe, speaking of syncopation, or synchronization, whichever, the drums on this one really, all three of them are I'd say they're all playing with significant percussion, but this song really, the dynamics of this song, we're smooth and low, and then boom, like we said, it comes in and pounds. So yeah, I think that musically that makes that feeling that you just described happen.
Yeah.
It's even like a little touch point back to their early career too, where they had, they're known for that power, and so I think maybe just a little bit of a kickback to the early days perhaps too. Maybe just spitballing, I think just maybe like a little homage to Neil in a little bit of a way, so that was my sort of first impression when I heard it. I'm like, oh, this definitely feels like early Rush to me at this moment when it really kicks in. So I think just the fact that they're reconnecting as bandmates again too, and sort of drawing back on past musical arrangement, perhaps, experience, mood, and the like. So
Definitely not a 4/4 beat.
hard to dance to. I can't dance, so
There will be an episode coming up where we all dance to Rush music. Not.
That's clickbait if I've ever heard it. So, takes us into the chorus, keeping that up tempo, very moving on type feel. You can never break the and notice the melodic feel in this chorus too. You can never break the chain. There is never love without pain. A gentle hand, a secret touch on the heart. A gentle hand, a secret touch on the heart. For only 4 lines, there's a lot to unpack here. So, I don't know if someone else wants to start. I do have a couple of literary references I know are in here. Do the quick one. There's never love without pain. I know that was attributed to, and I really should have worn my readers for this one because it's small. But Sister of My Heart from 1999. I'm going to butcher another name. Chitra
Energy.
Karuni. Long story, very short, summarized. Stories about 2 sisters. One goes to live in India and the other one comes across the pond. And they go through every emotion and situation possible. And it's their connection through the good, the bad, the hurting, the healing, the reconciliation, all that. So that's, I know, the inspiration for There's Never Love Without Pain. And then A Gentle Hand, a Secret Touch on the Heart, where we get our song title from. I'll do a quick summary. The novel Victory from Joseph Conrad, written in 1915. Main character's name is Axel Heist, and it would take us more than time we have to sum up this novel, but some of the pertinent points. Our protagonist, Axel, goes through a whole bunch of emotional turmoil, decides to withdraw from life, and makes the conscious decision, I'm just going to go with the flow. It's not as much a giving up as it is I'm no longer going to contribute to active life, and he becomes a hermit. Well, then he is carried away completely and literally body and soul to wander without ever clinging to anything. This is his defense against life. The next day, when he saw the girl, named either Alina or Alma, depending on what part of the story you're in, she left him with her way of looking at him with a frank tenderness, quick as lightning, a deep impression, a secret touch in his heart. So, Eric, you got a little bit more on the novel?
Yeah, no, that summed it up great. And actually, since you mentioned that part, I have sort of what seems to be a sister passage from Ghost Rider. So this comes from one of the last couple pages of Ghost Rider, so the very end of the journey. And he says, a week or two later, this is Neil speaking, a week or two later, I somehow found myself circling back toward Los Angeles, and Carrie and I, who was his second wife, and Carrie and I had our first date alone together at a restaurant in Laguna Beach, then drinks over at the Ritz-Carlton. Again, we talked comfortably, growing friendly but not flirty, until one moment when I chanced to see her from across the restaurant. That single, unforgettable glance of her unguarded face would stop time and change everything. One telling moment melted my cool resolve and beckoned me back to the land of the loving. Which, I mean, could not tie in better to the themes of Victory, could not tie in better to the themes of the song Secret Touch. And, the whole song is sort of an homage to being brought back to the land of the loving, which is sort of how he got into the mess. He was in the land of the loving and lost all that he loved. And like David said, the way out is the way in, back into the land of the loving.
That's awesome. I remember when I read Ghost Rider for the first time, I just assumed it was about the journey. I didn't know it was going to lead up to the point where he met Carrie, and I almost, when I read, oh, he's going to be happy again. It was such a beautiful wrap up to the book. And the lines you just read, Eric, are absolutely perfect. Except we had a conversation earlier before we started recording. Perfection doesn't exist in this transitory existence, but that's for another episode. But yeah, yeah, he had that moment where he was out of sync, out of touch that it all came back that moment. That's awesome. Again, another thing I wanted to point out, that first verse, out of touch, right? But then in the chorus, a secret touch on the heart, right?
Yep.
So brings things back. You're out of touch and you're back in touch. You can never break the chain, which means can't get out of this process. Again, the way out is the way in. That seems to be the Lebowski rug that ties the whole song together. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. So you can't break the chain. There is never love without pain, but then there is that secret touch on the heart. I mean, really very few lyrics. This isn't multiple verses and bridge and choruses, but you could spend hours thinking about potentially what it means and how we can identify with it in our own experiences in different ways.
Excellently put.
Gee, thanks.
And again, we talked about avoiding perfection, but Eric, outstanding, definitely. So after that chorus, it goes back to the same smooth, soft music that we had going for the intro. And again, reminder, and what's the Donna rule teaching us about repetition of lyrics? So the way out is the way in, the way out is the way in, the way out is the way in, the way out is the way in. And then right back to that slamming, right back into the next verse. Anyone have anything to add before we go back to the up-tempo verse? All right. So next verse, out of sync with the rhythm of my own reactions, with the things that last and the things that come apart. Out of sync with love in the land of the living, a gentle hand, a secret touch of the heart. So again, describing what we saw before, and I like that, David, how you brought up out of touch and then secret touch. Now it's out of sync. So it's again that describing that feeling of being detached from everything or everyone else. And we already know from the first chorus that things are starting to come together. The song is clearly, I don't think it's a reach at all to say that this is the journey we've gone through on the album with the sequence that the songs have gone on. We've almost cracked a little bit light about it on previous roundtables, where going from like how Peaceable Kingdom to How It Is to Vapor Trails, like, when is this cycle going to break? Well, it's going to break here.
Yeah.
So
I think
Another little. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say too, I think there are some advantages to being a hermit where, that introspection you get from sort of doing solitary activities like being on a motorcycle, for instance, which I'm sure his thoughts were hearkening back to the journey, obviously, to a degree. How things, that last, like a motorcycle could be, you're on a trip, you're on your bike, and you don't really anticipate something breaking down, but they do. So that's the thing that you can react very harshly to that and get pissed off, or you can go, okay, well, this is what it is. I might as well just pull over and call it's anybody to come get me or whatever the heck. So I think just the idea that he felt maybe if something went wrong on his trip, how would he react to that? How would he, would things come apart emotionally along with the mechanical part of the journey of riding on a motorcycle? I always mention the motorcycle, I think, on every episode so far. I don't know why, but I just always think of these songs of him being on the bike and doing the journey, which of course that's kind of where we're at. And the nature and everything else bringing him back in to, like what Eric just said before too, just that reconnection to, okay, I'm back at the land of the living. I can move, I can move back into or move out of whatever was going on. So I think just he might have had a concern about how would he react to certain things that were going on, with anything that could go wrong at any time. I mean, so.
Yeah. You can imagine Neil's temperament, had he tried to talk to somebody, go to therapy, meet with his friends and the people that loved him. He couldn't have gone through this had he done it on any other terms than his own, I think. Yeah. And there's a lovely juxtaposition, previous verse, out of touch with life in the land of the loving. Now he's out of sync with love in the land of the living. everything is just, again, he's out of sync with his own reactions. Hey, I'll choose the path that's clear. I'll choose free will. I do things on my own terms. I'm in control. No, I'm not. In this period and instance of his life, the rhythm of his own reactions, um,
which ties in beautifully with Rob's statement on isolation. Agreed.
Yeah. I love doing these episodes, just rediscovering. I mean, it's like I listen to this music all the time. I mean, I spend all of my time listening to Rish's whole catalog and everything else I love to listen to. But these episodes make me hear things and understand things that,
same here,
I just didn't get before.
And speaking of re-listens, real quick, we'll interrupt the lyrics. Original mix versus remix. To my ear, when I did that in prepping for this episode, this to me is the most stark contrast I've heard, starting from One Little Victory up to now. There is an extreme difference between the O2 mix and the 13 remix in this. The dynamics are much wider on the remix. It's not as almost busy, tiring. I don't want to sound negative towards O2. It has its place, and I love that about it, but there's a certain melodic feel to the remix where it's not such an oral assault on your ears with this.
Yeah, the O2 mix is very, it's like I said, it's a musical assault.
Yes.
It's just all crammed into the same, like, hertz, I guess you want to call it, or the same mix, and it's just, it's yeah. No,
it's the most clipped song so far.
Yeah. Still a great song on the O2 mix, like you said.
It's got
everybody has their favorite, right? Like
it makes a statement. We're talking about how this is the song where he's coming out of it, and he's coming out strong. So the O2 mix does that with its mix very well. So,
but it's just like we've talked about this in previous episodes about the loudness wars. It was just, this is the result of it. It was just right there, and it's just like, it's like a musical assault on your ears, right? But
yeah, and the different mix kind of gives you different ways to think about the experiences that he's writing about, right? Mm-hmm. It's not all just, it is this way. There are multiple facets to that, and the different mixes, I think, seem to capture the different ways that might be experienced. Even individually in a single experience, it's not just a monotone thing, right? There are lots of different ways we react to something. Sometimes even getting our own emotions jumbled, trying to figure something out because so many different ways. So, yeah, I'm so glad they did the remix, and not because I like it, even though it's my preference. There are parts in the O2 that I like, and so I'm just glad we have them both.
Me too. So this song's a great one. Like I said, that to contrast the two, you can listen to it in whatever sound space you want to hear it in. So. All right, which brings us to the next chorus. You can never break the chain, and I don't want to neglect to say Geddy is layering his vocals with some echo or reverb, whatever. Sorry. And then you never break the chain. There's never love without pain. A gentle hand, a secret touch on the heart. A healing hand, a secret touch on the heart. And then musically, this is where everybody, going back to the Cream reference that Rob made earlier, this is where it's almost a cycle now musically of there's vocal with more of Geddy saying the way out is the way in. And you've got Alex doing things with the guitar. You've got Neil doing different fills. There's an actual cycle of all of the musical elements going on at this point in the song, and it's going to lead into an interlude at I believe it's the 4-minute mark. So, if anyone has anything particular to say about the way they weave that, I'm not necessarily the most eloquent person to speak on the music side of it.
Are you speaking about the interlude?
Yeah.
I love that part. It's always my favorite, where Neil and Geddy play in syncopation.
Mm-hmm.
And the double bass drum and the bass at the same time. That always gets me. And Alex is just in the background doing this little riff.
Yeah, that's palm muted. Yeah, that palm muted staccato type of.
In the background, it's a really cool interlude.
Yeah.
I love when Neil and Getty get on that vibe and they just carry it. It's just then they get back into the song and then towards the last chorus. But
I was trying to pick a favorite live version because they played it on Vapor Trail, so we saw it on Russian Rio. They played it on R30 in 04, and they played it on Snakes and Arrows in 07. And it's funny because I couldn't pick a favorite and still can't, but I'm constantly drawn to this part of the song where that's where I was trying to pick a favorite version. I never did and don't have to because all Rush is good Rush. But that being said, there's just slightly different feels to each of them that I can't put into words. So I'm glad we have all three different live versions professionally recorded because they just great live song.
And we were just talking about how the original mix is sort of an assault on the years, which is I think sort of remarkable for how much is going on even in the remix. I mean, there is just so much going on. There's double tracked bass, there's however many tracks of guitar. And I think when you listen with headphones, it only enhances the experience when you can hear things panned back and forth. And
yes,
I mean, I've heard this song however many times. I'm sure all of you have heard this song however many times. And going back to listen today, I'm hearing guitars that I've never heard before in this song. It's just remarkable how much is going on. And like you were saying, Paul, uh, they've got great live recordings of this. And, people always say it's amazing how three guys can make so much sound. I think this is a perfect encapsulation of that. I mean, watching them play this song live when it's only bass, guitar, and drums, how much sound they make, especially during this interlude, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And playing off each other, like Rob said, that Cream style where it's not that when Alex is playing, Getty and Neil aren't doing something. They're very, very busy, but you can still, like you said, your ears, it's what your ear, or if you're watching the footage, what your eyes are drawn to, or what the camera pans to. But there's so much going on. Exactly. But everybody has their moment to shine.
Like Getty said in the Dan Rather interview, we want it to be the world's smallest orchestra. So I think that pretty much proves it, between triggers and sound samples. And like you said, they're always doing something. It's something to watch them live.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for people that have never seen them live because you'll never experience. You can hear the album and then you watch them do it live. It's a completely it's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a fan in Time Stand Still that made the comment that you have all the live videos and they're great, but none of them even come close to an actual live experience of Rush. And that's very, very true. Another thing that I thought of with this song and Beyond the Lighted Stage, when they're doing the part where Neil is going off on his motorcycle journey, the background music is this song. Yeah.
Forgot about that. Yeah. Good call.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this is, it's, I mean, every song is in some way related to the motorcycle. I mean, Rob, you brought that up. You always mention the motorcycle. That's because that's the, sort of the supporting character that's behind this entire record is the motorcycle.
Yeah.
But they use this song as Neil was taking. Was it in Beyond the Lighted Stage or was it another part? Okay, I've only watched these documentaries 1,000 times each, but now I need to go back, just to be sure. But I want to say it was in Beyond the Lighted Stage where this, whichever one it was, he was on his motorcycle on the road and they were playing this.
Yeah, he was talking about landscapes, how nature kind of brought him back. That's kind of that part in the film when he was talking about that. It was nature and landscapes that, so
Yeah.
it's a lot.
And the world is bigger than and more wonderful, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Good part. All right, and then after the interlude, again, as I said, the lyrics, I don't want to get too specific because they're, again, this musical cacophony or whirlwind or crescendo, whatever. But after a repeat of the lyrics, the way out is the way in, takes us to another chorus, which is, and again, the vocals here are even layered. So when I was writing out our lyric sheet, I probably listened to it 5 seconds at a time to make sure I had these in the right order. But You can never break the chain. There's never love without pain. A gentle hand, a secret touch on the heart. You can never break the chain. Life is a power that remains, is a lyric we have not heard yet until now. There's never love without pain. A healing hand, a secret touch of the heart. A gentle hand, a secret touch on the heart. So then at 5, I've got on my notes at the 5-minute, 10-second mark, it goes back to the introspective feel and back into that. The way out is the way in as we hit our outro. There is so much going on with this ending. I don't know how to describe it, but just that jazzy type of feel. And it doesn't, it's to me, it's a great coming down after we've had so much happen. And we've talked about thematically how here's the transition, here's the turning point. I think it's a fantastic way to end this song, is to do it this way. It's not the fade that so many of us have sometimes felt, maligned. And it's definitely not a song. I think if it would have ended abruptly, it would have been jarring. So there's almost a cool down musically. And I think it just fits the song perfectly.
It's like a mix between a cold end and a fade. It just kind of just fades, just stops and just fades away. It's not like the song is continuing, but it's fading that you can't hear it. It just slowly just kind of draws to
It's
conclusion.
not the soundboard fading it out.
Correct.
Right.
It's them fading out the song on their own. Just making it simpler and simpler until you hear that last guitar note.
Like a vapor trail.
Nice.
See
what you did there.
Yeah.
Yeah, mic drop.
I know, right?
That last
But it's accurate.
Yeah.
It's true because it's accurate. Yeah. That last line, life is the power that remains. After all of this song goes out on that high note, right? And just thinking about that, I thought of Bravado. Right? The love remains. We will pay the price, but we will not count the cost, right?
And if love remains.
Because the love remains, and life is the power that remains. So it's like every song on this record, and it helps to know the story rather than if you listen to this cold with no background, though it would still speak, I think, to your own experience in different ways. But just that recurring thing that happens on this album, no matter how dark it gets, you just keep going, and there's a reason to keep going. And Carrie became that reason largely for him, and of course the love of his friends and family.
Very hopeful for all the sort of downer lyrics in the song. I think the song overall is very hopeful.
Agreed.
Yep.
And going back to that outro, I think, in my opinion, the drums are the highlight of the outro. There's times where I turn this song up at the outro just so I can hear the drums that much better. I think he just puts on a masterclass in feel and in offbeat accents and cymbal work and all this. I mean, it's amazing. The sound of the drums, the mix of the drum, everything about that drum part at the end is awesome. And people often say, "Oh, Neil's a technician, but John Bonham is the king of feel," and they're both. Maybe Neil wasn't swingy, but this is a perfect case of feel. And I mean, nothing would have fit the end of this song better than the way he played that drum part. I mean, it is such a great feel part. I love it. It's awesome.
The way he integrates little fills and just, like you said, that groovy feel to it. It's perfect for the end of that song. It's not flashy. It's not in your face. It's just, it fills the mood that the song is with the guitar and the bass, just slowly drawing it out. But he's, I agree with you 100%, Eric.
Yeah. It gives you a sense, a little Tolkien, the road goes ever on.
Yeah. I think even too with Neil going back, if you watch the live clips, he goes back to traditional grip for this part too. He flips it over and playing, bringing back some of the Freddie influence, Freddie Gruber, and getting the circular motion, the feel, and playing with the clock. Nice.
Which ties in exactly how Eric described. Yeah.
There might be 6 years between Vapor Trails and Test for Echo, but the Freddie Gruber influence is still there to a certain degree. Not as much as Test for Echo, but it's still there for Vapor Trails. But yeah, no, I agree.
And for such a percussive song, that's the beautiful top there. So.
And Neil probably wouldn't have picked up a pair of drumsticks for how many years between that in that break?
Or so, yeah.
He probably had to relearn a lot of the stuff. But coming from the guy who rehearsed for rehearsals, he would go to the studio for 2 weeks to practice for the rehearsals for a tour. You know what I mean? Like he was a perfectionist.
That fits the road theme too of Tolkien, what Dave just mentioned, getting back on the road to these old playing habits and styles and rehearsal and techniques of rehearsal. So the road was a good mention.
Yeah. And how Neil said after that first show in Hartford, Connecticut, it would have been a shame if this had never happened.
Right. No regrets.
Yeah.
That seems like a great point to finish with. So I want to thank you, gentlemen. Thank everybody who watched. Don't forget to please like and subscribe. Share us on your social pages. And don't forget, check out the links in the description for our sponsors. And check out our merch shop, which is also below. And we will catch you on the next one.